When you catch a female crab, sometimes you can see that it has this roundish thing attached to it. That's the abdominal sac. It contains thousands of eggs, but not this one. This is not a female carrying its eggs. In fact, it's not even female. This is Sacculina. So, let me broad up the question. What exactly is Sacculina? The name means little sac, because they are little sac. Or are they? Sacculina are barnacles. While the usual barnacles have hard shell and stick themselves to a hard substrate, Sacculina clearly don't. In fact, there is a whole infraclass of such barnacles, called Rhizocephala, which means root head. Why is it called root head? And how do we know they are barnacles since 2 centuries ago? I'll talk about it later in the video. Rhizocephalans are obligate parasite of decapod crustacean, so shrimps, crabs, and others. In the case of Sacculina, they are obligate parasites of crabs. True crabs, I mean. The type species, Sacculina carcini, mainly parasitize the European green crab. Since they are obligate parasites, their distribution range also coincides with their host. There are a lot of Sacculina species, and even if we're only talking about Sacculina carcini, their host is an invasive species around the world, so Sacculina are widely distributed. What we're looking at here is an adult female. And a crab, of course, but we're not talking about that. More specifically, we are looking at part of their body called externa. Intuitively, there is also a part called interna, which is located inside the crab. So, look at this image right here. The branching vessels inside the crab in this image is not the crab's blood vessel, nor their nerve system. It's the interna of the Sacculina. Oh, by the way, that's why their group is called Rhizocephala, because this looks like roots. They don't seem to have the usual internal organs of animals. In fact, it looks like they don't have organs at all, not even appendages, segments, and stuff like that. They only have this tendrils-like thing which is the interna and this sac thing which is the externa. At first, scientists thought they are not animals, perhaps some kind of fungus. So let's talk about the previous question. How do we know they are barnacles since before molecular analysis era? Well, that's because their early larval stage are basically the same as other barnacles. After hatching, they live as a free-swimming larva called nauplius. These larvae don't eat. They don't even have mouth. After several molts, they turn into the second larval stage, which is the cypris or cypris, whichever is easier for you to say. To this point, it's the same as other barnacles. In the typical barnacles, cypris will stick to a substrate, encrust, and become the adult form. In Rhizocephalan, including Sacculina of course, the female cypris will find a host and then metamorphose into a form called kentrogon. The kentrogon does not have hard shell. The entire function of the kentrogon is to inject firmigon into the host. After the firmigon enters the host, it will turn into the root-like things and wrap itself through the host tissues and organs. This is the interna. After that, they will form the sac and push it outwards. The sac will dangle from the abdomen of its host. This is the externa. The whole externa is basically their reproductive organ. After development, the sac will have an opening. Males will enter this opening to reproduce. Oh, by the way, males live freely as a cyprid larva. After a male cypris enters an externa, they will enter the stage called trichogon, which also don't have hard shell. It's basically the male counterpart of the female kentrogon. Oh, by the way, the externa can be entered by 2 males. At the end of its journey, males will basically become cells that turn into male gamete. Sperms. These will then fertilize the female. That's their life cycle. Now, let's talk about the effect of this parasitism to their host. But before that, After being entangled by the interna, the hosts are basically taken over. They will not develop, they will not molt, which means they don't even grow. They do still eat and do the necessary biological process though, since the Sacculina are still dependent on the host survival after all. Sacculina absorb nutrients from the host just like other internal parasites. While not being able to grow and develop is bad enough, that is not the extent of the alteration to the host. They also rework the host endocrine system. If the host is female, Sacculina will make the host behave as if they are brooding female. If the host is male, Sacculina will make them degenerate all of their male traits so they resemble female. Not just how they look, how they act too. In fact, they will also act as if they are brooding females. Hosts will be sterile after this alteration, of course, hence why it's called parasitic castration. So, what's with making them act this way? Well, since the externa is basically similar to the crab's egg sac, the crab will protect them as if it's their egg. When it's almost time to hatch, the crab will shake its body and the eggs and disperse the larvae, just like what they would do to their own offsprings. This of course is very beneficial to ascertain the success of Sacculina's life cycle. Oh, by the way, the host can survive for up to 2 years, which also means that's the lifespan of female Sacculina. They can breed multiple times during these 2 years. Remember when I briefly mentioned that the European green crabs are highly invasive throughout the world? There was a plan to use Sacculina as biological control to combat this invasion, since they will prevent individuals from mating for up to 2 years. There was a problem though. It was discovered that Sacculina can also parasitize other crabs, so using them as biological control can be harmful to native species. A publication in 2014 provided evidence that Sacculina can even parasitize marine crabs that are commercially relevant for humans, such as crabs in the genus Portunus and Charybdis. A publication in 2017 provided evidence in another consumed crabs, which are the mud crabs. These evidences put heavier weights against the idea of using them as biological controls. The variety of hosts also mean varying breeding season. That way, Sacculina as a taxon can basically proliferate throughout the year, which ensure their survival. Oh, one last thing. While I was googling for materials, I stumbled upon this question in Quora. Is it safe to eat crab with a Sacculina parasite in it, in an emergency situation? Well, that was quite the question. Remember, the interna is basically spread throughout the crab's body, so it's basically impossible to eat the crab while avoiding the parasite. I don't think you will die from eating it, especially if you cook it thoroughly. I don't have evidence for this answer, of course, so take it with a grain of salt. Perhaps you should add some salt too if you decided to eat it. Maybe it'll be somewhat palatable. Still, what kind of emergency forces you to eat crab infested with Sacculina? That's quite an interesting predicament. But anyway, as weird as Sacculina is, there are a lot of Sacculina species, so their life strategy definitely works. Who knows what we will discover in the future? For now, let's just learn what is known. And that's all for now. Oh, by the way, parasitic castration is not exclusively done by the rhizocephalans. Other groups of parasites do too, with different ways that is. Anyway, enjoy your day.